to say about New England, feeding New England.
Sure. Thank you so much, dear Chair Durfee. For the record, my name is Caroline Gordon. I'm the Legislative Director of Rural Vermont. And I just wanted to spontaneously take the chance just to comment on the phenomenal presentation from New England, Feeding New England. As Legislative Director for Rural Vermont, I also studied the brief already. And when I look at it, the piece that really significantly stands out to me and why I want to comment on it also is because I will be representing on the 30 by 30, 50 by 50 process on the Ag Group for Rural Vermont, where I think this piece that I find so critical is going to be subject, and that is land access. Because when you look at the data and you saw that was the opening slide, the projection of how many acres we will lose in agriculture if nothing were to change, paired with the demographics in agriculture, so land that's potentially going to be on the market for sale that used to be agriculture, paired with considerations how the average negative farm income is negative, and with the raise in land value, the raise in property taxes is going on par. So the affordability of making a living from agriculture is diminished as the ability of affording to get into agriculture is also being continued to diminish. And what's really frustrating to me is that I didn't hear in the presentation, I heard in the presentation, I want to say it that way, that the focus is yet on on distribution and supply chain. Not what's your task, the policy to change land access, because you let the market work on supply chain and distribution. What will be the policy to change land access for farmers? And I think that's really a discourse where the political question, like what can even be politically feasible to change something about this market trajectory, is a really interesting question. And I hope that that's what I will make subject also in our conversations on the Vermont Conservation Strategy Initiative, which is this 30 by 30 process now called, because there we will discuss kind of how can agriculture count towards our conservation goal. And I find it really frustrating that it's all only numeric, because agriculture won't count unless the land is protected in perpetuity. And all the policies we have in place are voluntary. Our program we have in policy and law to protect and keep the working lands open, and statute is the current use program, is voluntary. A conservation easement is voluntary. I've talked, when I was a beginning farmer looking for farmland in Vermont, I talked to farmers trying to buy their farmland, and they didn't want to sell it to me because they rely on making the profit from selling to a developer so that their retirement is secure. So without a policy, the goodwill of the farmers to secure their retirement will prevail the land access needs of the future generation farmers. And so there needs to be a policy to change something in this trajectory. And I think there is plenty legal opportunity to discuss this. I would just like to see that discourse in depth. And I think it doesn't have to be a discourse solely of this process that's beyond the legislature, because what will happen, we're going to wait until 2025 until we sit here again discussing their recommendations. And I think we have to start that discourse earlier, as it's also about really these scarcity needs on land use and also infringing property rights potentially with this. So there's a lot of conflicting interests. So I think it's really, really important for you to start exploring what can be feasible land access policies in agriculture. I'd be happy to testify on that again when that's the subject. Certainly have ideas around that. But I think that will be the crux to actually get land into agricultural production so we can meet those goals. It will not be the consumers who buy the food, it has to be the farmer who produces it first. And that's just what I wanted to echo because, yeah, I think that's really important. But if otherwise, I would hope that Liz Roma is joining us on Zoom. I did call her on the break, so I was able to confirm that she's not here in person, but that she will be zooming in.
Well,
And I'm really excited on that. Yeah.
Thank you for your comments on land access. And just, does anybody have a comment or a question for Caroline while she's here on that subject? And
I have one question.
yes, yeah, go ahead.
You know, Carolyn, one of the numbers that struck me from Ellen's presentation wasn't that it was 400,000 acres existed, but to meet that 30 by 30 goal, we needed an additional 590,000 acres.
Yeah.
Was that region-wide or Vermont-wide?
I don't know that I can't answer that question. I can just say we heard testimony in this committee just last session from during our Small Farm Action Day on the land access issue, and heard from a variety of different perspectives why it's almost impossible to start a farm in Vermont if you don't have intergenerational wealth. I hear from young farmers my age all the time that they leave the state because they were here for 3+ years unable to attain farmland. And so this is the situation, I think. And yes, and it also affects, as Ellen Kaler said, not just starting a new farm. It's the same issue also if you have a farm, you want to scale up your production and you can't afford the farmland. So it's, yeah.
I think the short answer is that was a region-wide number.
New England.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Caroline. We have been joined now by Elizabeth Roma, who has been waiting patiently, either on Zoom or otherwise, to join us. And we're just going to switch topics and talk about H603. Elizabeth, thank you very much. I understand that you are a poultry farmer, and we're interested in hearing your perspective on the bill, and maybe just if you could start by introducing yourself. I will say that I don't know whether you've been to the State House before. We're all sitting in the committee room for the Committee on Agriculture, Food Resiliency, and Forestry. And we're happy to have you join us from wherever you are. And it looks like maybe the side of the road somewhere. But we're just curious to know more about a little bit about what you do, and then your thoughts on this bill, how it might be helpful or otherwise for you. And we can't hear you.
Oh, yeah.
If you can unmute yourself, and I'm not sure. There you go. Let's hear it now.
Are you there?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I am Elizabeth Roma. So my husband and I own Putting Down Roots, which is a poultry farm. Well, it's a meat farm. We raise pigs, layers, meat birds. And then on top of that, during COVID, I opened up a butcher shop in South Royalton. So I own a retail butcher shop and a custom cutting facility, packing facility. So I both am a farmer and a business person in the meat industry. I've worked at various slaughterhouses here in this state and in Maine. So I definitely have a grasp on what it is to be a state inspected facility or not. And so I've been raising birds, doing on-farm slaughter and taking them to markets for years. And it's very hard to move whole birds, and it's hard to sell whole birds because most people want breasts and thighs and tenders. And so lugging around, 20 birds to every market and coming home with 20 to 19 birds, because no one wants to buy whole birds. They want to buy parted birds. So with my shop, I buy whole birds from Misty Knoll or Maple Wind Farm and break it down so that people can get their parts and pieces. it's very rare for me to sell whole birds even at my retail store. So I feel that scratching the word whole would be really helpful to all our farmers, because selling a whole bird is so difficult. And, I know all of my customers want to buy locally. They all want to buy from a local farmer. I have multiple local poultry farmers that are right around me in my area. And I can't sell them because, I can't sell them, but they have a hard time selling them because they're whole birds. So I think that this would be extremely helpful to all the farmers.
How many chickens do you raise and sell a year?
So we only did 500 when we were a poultry farm that were meat birds. We did about 1,500 layers. So just 500 meat. And then I was doing 40 pigs, but so we would probably up the numbers if they could be parted out,
Yeah. And just to give us a sense of that 500, difficult to sell, as you just explained, when you were able to sell them, when you were able to sell them, who were the customers? Were you selling them at the farmer's market or to restaurants or directly to consumers on your farm?
Either directly to consumers on the farm or at farmers markets. We never made that connection with restaurants. There's not that many in our area. And so the few farms that were able to make those connections, they hold tight to those restaurants. So it's hard to wiggle in there.
Right.
But I will tell you that we stopped farming poultry because of COVID and the avian flu all happening at the same time, and kind of our whole business kind of collapsed. And I still have birds in my freezer today. Lots of them. I have 3 freezers of birds, and I can't sell them at my store either. So, yeah.
Any questions? As Representative O'Brien.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hey.
It's not a problem with this bill at all, but if you say can sell as many breasts as possible, what happens to the unwanted parts of the chicken?
It's funny. It's like no one wants a whole bird, but people want breasts. They want thighs. And then you have plenty of drums and wings. Wings get gobbled up eventually around Super Bowl football season. And so many pet owners want those chicken backs, and so many people that are making stock. So it's like when you have 5 chicken backs in a bag, they want that, but they don't want the breast and the thighs and other things because they're making stock. So it's like everyone's doing their separate thing. No one wants one single whole bird to do multiple things. So.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, customers want, we've heard this from several sources now, that they want breasts and they want thighs. They don't want whole birds. Do they want those breasts and thighs to be boneless?
Well, usually when you're parting out a bird, they are boneless. Typically, at least how we break down at our shop. And then thighs, I don't give people the choice. They take the bones. So that's just business.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I've seen other shops where they keep the drum and the thigh on because drums are impossible to sell as well. So some shops don't even take the thigh and the leg and the drum off. They keep them together and say, if you're buying a thigh, you're buying both. So, which I think is interesting strategy as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It just occurs to me also, I have one other question. As a butcher, you're also then in the position of parting birds. And you have currently have the authority to do that. Your license somehow, can you tell us about that?
Can you repeat that last part? There was a plow going by.
Can you just say a little bit about how you're legally able to, in the butcher shop, what gives you the authority to do what the farmer can't do right now? Which is part of it.
Yeah, I have both a retail license and a meat packing license. So I buy in through the distributor through Black River. I buy whole birds and then break down the birds there and then put them in my retail shop. So.
And you have a license to do that.
Correct.
You would need to have a license to do that.
Yes. Yes.
All right. I don't see any other hands up, so why don't we let you get back to whatever it was you're doing.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, this would be very useful for all the farmers to actually be able to sell chicken to our local community. It'd make things a lot easier, but I also know that there's like more steps and safety, and like I'm for that, you know. And I teach classes with Vermont Tech, both lamb, poultry, beef and pig classes. And it's like, if that means taking on classes that teach farmers how to do it safely, let's do that so that we can make this work, because I think it's really important for our farmers to be able to do this. So, yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Yep. All right.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Bye.
So when Mike comes in,